In the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today.
Hi, welcome to Materialise, the Launch Tabletop podcast, where we talk about turning game ideas into tangible objects. Today is the 31st of March, 2023, and this is episode 20. And this week's topic is perfecting playtesting processes with our special guest, Aaron Lim. And I hadn't switched the video back to everyone. Hello. So in my notes, I've still got hosts that aren't present today, so my notes are going to be confusing me all day. But we've got Alana. Hello, Alana.
Hello. Yeah, no Alan or Kate today.
Yeah, both unable to be with us. That's all right. How have you been?
Good. Yeah, about the same.
That was such an awkward question. It was awkwardly asked, awkwardly timed. Everything was awkward.
No, just busily getting ready for our trek to the US in a few weeks, heading to Gamma.
That's right.
Which is very exciting. So all hands on deck, getting ourselves sorted out. It's one of those things that Aaron and I were just talking about this. It kind of sneaks up on you. It may seem like it's way in the future, but 4 weeks goes very quickly.
Yeah, totally. And that's a great segue. We've got our special guest, Aaron Lim. Hello, Aaron.
Hello. Hi.
I will read out my pre-written script for your introduction, and I'll try and sound as non-robotic as possible. So, Aaron was our very first guest. You were here on episode 2, Aaron. So it's great to have you back. Aaron is a game designer, and I've put you're an educator. I don't know if that's actually technically true. You were working with a college at some point.
Yeah. I still am. I do teach game design.
Oh, that works. So you're an educator in Malaysia, but you've also lived in Australia for about a decade. And you have run multiple playtesting groups and events, including Incubator Melbourne, which you ran for about 4 years, I think. I kind of guessed on that number. It was quite a while.
Yeah, around there.
Maybe it was longer, but it was quite a while. And more recently, you've been doing work Playtest Zero, which is an RPG-focused playtest event, which I know nothing about. I only learned about it, just before the podcast. So I'll ask you about that when we get into some questions. Last time you were on the podcast, so back in episode 2, you had just come back from America after being a panelist at Big Bad Con. And then it just turns out that you're being involved in their online con tomorrow. So that's just funny timing. And so tomorrow, for those who are watching this today, you can go to the link that's in the description of the video. And there is a link to a panel that Aaron is running, which is on the same topic as we're talking about today, which is playtesting. But Aaron's got a way cooler title. The title for Aaron's panel is Practical Pointers for Productive and Pleasurable Playtesting. Love it. I love it. It's fantastic.
It's very self-indulgent, a lot of alliteration.
And then I totally stole your idea for the for this. So I'll for like our one, we've got, what did I put? Pitfalls plaguing your procedures, promote productive playtesting through planning and practice. I was just like, this is a great idea. I'm stealing it. So yeah. So
are you sure you didn't use ChatGPT for that?
I should have. Oh, I didn't even think of it. No, I actually spent real human hours on that with the help of Kate. Kate was also helping me try and get the wording right. So today we're talking about playtesting, and I guess I'll ask you about the No, before I ask you about that, I'm going to ask you about so last time you were on, you'd just done a Kickstarter for Spectres of Brocken, which was an RPG that you've created. And it is successfully funded. And I just was wondering if you had any updates, any progress that you want to share with everyone?
Yeah, it's been going it's been going pretty well. There were some slight delays, like a lot of it is just like life stuff. Like we had to move out of our apartment because the um the pipes are really old, and so we needed to do some renovations. So like it was a fairly like we'd been waiting for like to get a contractor lined up for it, and it took us very long to get it done. And then when we finally got it done, like it was a bang bang bang. We got to quickly pack everything up, you know, close
Wow.
up all the areas that, because it's just the toilets, right? So all the other rooms,
Yeah.
make sure there's no dust. So like we covered it all up like with plastic bags and stuff.
Yeah.
And then after that, moved into with my in-laws, temporarily, and then they both got COVID. So Jeannie and I, we had to make sure that they were okay. They're fine, like they recovered and all. And then there's like Chinese New Year, all that. So other than the normal, like, oh man, like there's all these delays, right? And I had, I come from like a planning and scheduling background, so I built in some contingency, but like that contingency was like just gone.
Yeah. Wow. That's a whole lot of
Yeah,
stuff
just
to happen in a row like that.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. So the writing on it and like the development, so we're in developmental editing right now. I'm working with a really great editor, Ray Najadi. He's going through the document, and I'm just like, oh, I gotta do some revisions once he's done going through all of that. So we're just doing that process, and while that has been happening, I've been sorting out like all the artwork for the book, and we've just gotten in like the past couple of weeks, we finished up. I waited a little bit before sharing it publicly, but like we got some brand new pieces of art. I just did a Kickstarter update for that.
Awesome.
And yeah, so it's been going pretty well aside from like the delays. 'Cause I was hoping to get everything done by May. But it looks like it'll probably be done by like June instead. So like there's been like about a month's delay in there. But other than that, it's been fun. I did a bunch of play testing for it.
In the world of Kickstarter, though, a month doesn't seem that long for a delay. Some projects get delayed considerably longer than that.
Yeah, but it's for me, right? Like this is also a bit of it is my own pride, because like I know like I built in like contingencies. Like I'm a planner, right? And yeah, I was just like, oh man, the last Kickstarter I did, I even with the delays, I think I made exactly when I projected everything was going to happen. But that was different because like I was control, like I did all like my own editing and layout, so I kind of like had full control over all the process. Not to say that like other people have been delayed. Actually, I've been the one that's delayed this time. But it does make it easier to like, hey, if I'm delayed, then I can crunch somewhere else. Whereas because I'm working with like other artists and editors, like if I'm delayed, I can't tell my editor to like crunch the time, because
No.
they he's got other stuff to work on. In fact he has like he just put out a brand new like book, like just released like this past week, called Apocalypse Keys as well. So he's been busy on all of that stuff. So I'm gonna make sure that like, hey, if I'm delayed, like, and I miss the window when he's free to do the editing, then like there can be like like waterfall of like delays, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so I was very proud of like hitting everything last time. But yeah.
We have a question from Jason in the comments, who says, "What's your best planning tip?"
Always just multiply everything by like all your estimates by like 1.5, 1.7. Yeah, like always leave contingency in there, and like plan around. So I knew that like my writing, the time that I had set aside for like writing and like development and editing, all that would hit like Christmas and Chinese New Year for me, and so I made sure I just considered those as like non-working times, right? Like I built in, like, even though in my mind, and I did do a little bit of work, but like like with all the family stuff and all, yeah. So like
better just to write that time off.
Yeah,
altogether.
yeah. So
Yeah.
so so when in my previous day, I guess still current, I do a little bit of consulting still here and there still. But in that, like, one of the most important things we do every year is update our calendars to account for like all the correct public holidays, long weekends, shutdown periods, and making sure that's all up to date, and then accounting for like I guess because like previously I mainly worked in construction, so you have to account for like wet weather days, hot weather days, like when it's too hot to work, and also for wind days if you are doing like a lot of like external, especially like crane work. Like sometimes it's just too windy to work. And the funniest the funniest anecdote, I used to do a little bit of work on like planning for wind farms. And the thing about wind farms is that it's very windy.
You want them to be windy.
Yes. And to put up the wind farms, you need the cranes, and the cranes can't operate when it's too windy. Which means you have to build in a lot of contingency and planning for your wind farms because of the wind, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah, wow.
Or just turn the other windmills off, then it won't blow as much air, right?
Yeah. So I think
Problem solved.
the two big things is just know your like your I guess externality. I don't know what you like. You know what your contingency is, and the second one is like what I mentioned, right? Like, if you have dependencies, you need to make sure you understand all your dependencies and how breaking one like how pushing one dependencies will have a cascade effect. Like if I miss my editor's window, and then he becomes really busy because he's booked for another job. I need to know how to manage that and like have contingency plans in place. Like, do I get another editor, or do I split up the editing work somehow? Like I had some backup plans, but like luckily I didn't have to use them. But yeah, like it's just that it's knowing exactly what your contingencies are, and making sure that you account for all the dependencies that you can. Sometimes you
reducing
can't, like
bottlenecks.
Yeah. Sometimes you can't, and like there really is like no no way for you to have known like that there would be, there's known unknowns and then like unknown unknowns, right? And for those, like, you just kind of need to just build in like extra time for those, right?
Yeah, there's always going to be certain choke points as well, but it's sort of like you can't necessarily split that out. It's like it's a nexus where everything kind of comes together, and if that one choke point causes issues, it kind of will delay things regardless.
And it's really tough with creative work, right? Because you never know, like it's very hard to tell when done is done, right? Like when you build a building, like you put the roof on, it's pretty much done. But even then, right? Like we're doing renovations on our toilets, like I mentioned, right? It's like, do we want to, while we have to pull out everything for the pipes anyways, do we want to do these other things to like fix up? We have a bit of budget, we have some time. Like, do you want this to be done, right?
Scope creep.
Yes. Having very clear vision for what you want to deliver, and like making sure your scope is controlled. Yeah, sorry, Aaron.
No, it's okay. So Jason was responding to the building a wind farm in a windy area, and sounds like a good game idea. And I agree, that does sound like a perfect theme for multiple games, not just one. So yeah, because
it's a headache.
Similar thing. Well, a similar problem I was thinking of was I saw a picture of one of those oil drilling rigs in the middle of the ocean, and I was just like, how do they build them? Like, because that's like really like stormy kind of seas and stuff, and it's like I'm just like, it just blows my mind that people are able to engineer solutions to like build that stuff. So yeah amazing.
Not to get into too much into the weeds, so please just tell me to shut up if it's like going too long. But like the other problem with wind farms, right, is that there are limited cranes that can handle lifts of that size and weight, right? And a lot of times what happens is that you have the same cranes that are booked out for like multiple projects, multiple different wind farms. And so if you are delayed on one wind farm, you cause a whole cascade of problems through all the projects, because there's only like 6 cranes in the state that can do it.
Yep.
Right, and if you literally can't, like if you need another crane, you might have to call someone from interstate to like, hey, I need a crane, and you're paying like all the transport costs, and like not to mention like the skilled operators for those, right?
I've heard that
it's a headache.
I've heard tunneling machines apparently are a similar thing. Like to tunnel those big, you know, like for highways and stuff. They're such a specialist piece of equipment that they're just like not everywhere. But then one of the stories I've heard, and now you might tell me this is a apocryphal story, but apparently when they were building the tunnel underneath the English Channel, so between France and England, this one of the stories I've heard is that France dismantled their tunneling machine and brought it all out, but England was like, that's too much cost and effort, and just like buried it. Just like, I'm just like, that's wild.
Yeah, because that machine was purpose built for that tunnel, so there's no chance for you to reuse it for a different project unless the specifications are exactly the same. I remember seeing something about that as well. Yeah, so I you know, I don't have it up on looked up right now, but I think you're right. I think that is what happened.
I'm happy to take it as a thing for now. True fact.
To relate it back to gaming, that's like that'd be like producing, you know, a bunch of games and then, you know, it costs more money to ship them somewhere to sell them than it is to just throw them all away. Like it's sort of there's these sort of like realities of the economics that kick in at some point.
Well, I know that with manufacturing in general, and this includes games, but with other things, often if you want a very high level of quality control, so like very well produced, like the customers getting the best quality versions, aside from trying to get all your actual creation, like your machinery and your workforce to be as skilled as possible, a huge part of it is simply just throwing away the bad ones. So part of how you get the really good quality is by simply just going, oh, okay, we're building 500, but we're only going to keep X number, like 400 or 250 or whatever it is. And that was something, when I learned about that in manufacturing, it was like shocking, because like my background is a graphic designer. My first 2 jobs were in print shops, and they would build in a number of overs. So they would, like, if there was like marks on the prints or like the ink hadn't dried properly or whatever. So the customer might have ordered 1,000, but they might print, 1,100 or whatever. Like, I don't know the numbers, but extras. Anyway, this was an interesting thing. So to get to some, so to ask you, to lead into the playtesting thing a bit more. So what's Playtest Zero? What's this event that you've been running? And
so I guess like a little bit of background, right? Like we mentioned incubator as well. I'll build up to that. So Aris, we used to go to this. We used to both take part in this incubator Melbourne, which is like a regular playtesting event. We used to do that once a month, and we use that time to like playtest board games, and we had very specific slots, right? Like you needed to book ahead of time, and you had a specific time frame. Like I think we used to do a morning one and an afternoon one, with the idea that the afternoon one would be the morning one you have to finish by. Yeah, you do the 2 morning ones you want to finish as quickly as possible, and the afternoon one we kind of like, look, if you want to stay, you can keep going, but like most people tapped out by mid-afternoon, right? So there was that, and then when I left Melbourne, and then Carl took over to Carl. It was yourself as well, right? Before you moved.
Yeah, me and Carl were doing it.
Yeah. You and Carl were doing it, and then because of the pandemic, it all went online. All like the playtesting was done on tabletop simulator mainly, and Tabletopia, which made the importance of like the slots like booking in slots, I felt like it made the importance of booking slots more important, because it wasn't just as simple as like, oh, I can just throw something together really quickly for a prototype. You need to actually spend some time to put it together online. And so if you didn't kind of like respect the time slot and like let other people play their games, it can result in a lot of like wasted effort, right? So that's kind of like the experience that I had like with playtesting events. And then when I kind of like in 2020 2021, I started to shift more towards tabletop RPG design. I wanted to do something similar, so something similar to incubator, and so we didn't end up using the same, like, you have to book in a time slot methodology, and that's mainly because of the quirks of tabletop RPG design. Is like, you probably don't need as much upfront. Like, a lot of times you can run a playtest with like 1 page of notes and that's it, right? So I thought that we didn't need to have like super strict like booking system that we used to have in like incubator, but we still, the thing that I kept was I wanted to make sure that a regular event allowed more than one game to be playtested at a time, and allowed people to like have a decent chance of like playtesting their game, because a lot of like tabletop RPGs can, like, a session can be quite long, can be like 2 to 3 hours, 4 6 hours even sometimes. I know like people talk about like, oh, you book out a whole day to play like a tabletop RPG, right? Like, if you can get everyone on the schedule together to play, you might as well like book out the whole day. Otherwise, it might be hard to like play scheduled Tetris again to like get everyone free at the same time. So the thing that I thought like was really useful learnings from like incubator was just to be very, not to say strict, but like to have very clear like time slots, and to make sure that like we were doing small playtesting in small chunks, just so that it gave enough opportunity for people, like different people, to come and playtest their games, and also kind of like lowers the barrier of entry, so that you don't feel so pressured to like have to bring something that's like super polished or anything. One of the reasons why it's called Playtest Zero is just like, bring whatever, right? Like I said, like, if you have 1 page of notes and you want to playtest that, that's fine, right? I think one of our members, Ari, was the one who said like, there's no draft too early for Playtest Zero, right?
That's great.
Yeah, there's no draft too rough. I think like it was a bit catchier than that. I don't think
Yeah.
there's no draft too rough for Playtest Zero, right? Yeah, so that kind of shortened time slot was a thing that I wanted to make sure that we did, even though it ends up like we are not always super strict about it, just because sometimes, if only 3 people show up to a playtest and only 1 person has something to playtest, we're going to playtest it for the rest for the time that we have, right? So it's not like super strict, like we're flexible about it, but like that sets the expectations for what people bring to playtest, and also it sets the expectation that like, hey, if I bring something to playtest, I finish it in an hour. So I should have mentioned like we keep our time slots to about an hour. So that like, look, it's low stakes, small. You cut part whatever you're trying to playtest, cut it into a section that can be done in an hour, and then when you take part in a play, if you didn't get to playtest this week, for sure like there will be a very good chance for you to playtest next time, because there's always multiple like opportunities, multiple slots that you can take. So that's that. That's why I wanted to bring up incubator, because I definitely come from a place where like incubator had a very big influence in like how I think about playtesting and how I approach like playtesting events specifically, because yes, you can playtest however you like, but like having to run a regular playtesting event and trying to make that happen regularly. Like I wanted to make sure one is like that there's that as low a barrier to entry as possible. Which is how we did it. Like we tried as much as possible to keep incubator events free and open and welcoming, but also like making sure that everyone gets a chance. So and with incubator that became felt like a very formal, strict procedure, but that helped everyone make sure that they knew they could get a playtest when they expected it. And for playtest 0 is that, like, look, we only do short playtests. So if you want to do longer playtests, you can do it. You can look for playtesters in the Playtest 0 Discord channels. We encourage that. But for the regular events, we just do short events so that we make sure that it happens every fortnight currently. And yeah, because like I think like one of the most important things about like running a regular event like this is to make sure that it's regular.
Yes.
And like people know that it's going to happen at a particular time at a particular place, right?
Yep.
And they know what to expect, right? So that it's sustainable for the participants, so that you're not asking too much from people who are playtesting. Like if every week, if I wanted to do an event where every week you had to commit 3 hours playtesting, some people might get like some people are really excited for that, right? Like that's what you need, right? When you're playtesting a game. But like for some people, it's like, oh, I don't know whether I can commit to that. But it's like, look, we only do 1 hour time slots. If you come for the first time slot, there's no obligation for you to stay for the second. It's up to you. And we do that once every 2 weeks. It's like, it's as low a bar as I can make it while still giving something substantial enough to get playtesting done, right? And that hopefully makes it a more sustainable event, like that happens regularly.
And I think though, building a culture as well, and both as an individual playtester and designer, having the mindset of give and receive. So like if you're expecting people to play your game, then make time to play their game as well. And I think that's a really important aspect to these events, which I know with Incubator we tried to do, and then in some of the other playtest events that I've either run or been a part of, it's something that is constantly brought up, because it's the most annoying thing is for someone to come along, play test their game, and then just disappear, and it's like, oh, okay, well, we've got all these other people who need their games tested as well, and it you kind of want to have a bit of that kind of reciprocation, I think is the word. So yeah. So I have been not as diligent this week, and I don't have a list of questions written out to ask you. So I'm just going to, off the top of my head, ask you different questions. Is there something that you've learned, because you've now been doing, like you did a whole lot of regular board game, card game kind of stuff with Incubator and that, and then now you're doing the RPG. Is there a lesson that you've learned about running a playtest that you've picked up from doing RPGs that you could apply to board games that maybe isn't, people don't do as much or something? Or is it just something, I don't know, some wisdom?
Yeah. It's very funny because like I think it's actually not that different.
Okay.
Obviously it is different. I might be contradicting myself here, but like they're two very different game types, right? But the mode of thinking is not very different, right? Of like, look, when you're playtesting, I think you need to maintain like curiosity and also like focus, right? Because a lot of times, like if you are not focused with how you approach a playtest, it can become a thing where like the playtesters want to pull it into different directions than what you originally wanted the game to be. And sometimes that's good. like if you realize that, oh, there's a much more fun direction that this game needs to be. I think we've seen a lot of like games like that in incubator where it's like, oh, we think this is going to be the main mechanic, but like, oh, actually the interaction in this other part of the game is actually much more interesting.
Yeah.
And so eventually you pivot towards that. But that isn't always going to be the case, right? So oftentimes you want to have that kind of like focus to make sure that like you're testing what you're meant to be testing.
Yeah.
So a lot of those kind of like ideas are kind of like shared across both game types. Sorry, Aris.
No. I was just I was thinking like one of the challenges for me with playtesting is that I definitely go down the rabbit hole of like a playtester will give me feedback and I'll be like wanting to kind of like investigate it immediately rather than maybe just saying thanks for that. I'll process it, later on and work it through. And so sometimes it can lead to discussions that could go for like half an hour when maybe we didn't need to have that half an hour discussion at that point, like it would be better. And I think I also, one lesson that I'm still learning every time I playtest is that sticking to like having that vision of what is my goal with this game, what am I trying to achieve, and then trying to filter feedback, if it fits within that or not. And because as we know, like playtesting, well, I'm saying as we know, people may not know, when you're playtesting, it's very common to be playtesting with other designers. That seems to be the majority of the pool who are willing to play test because they want their game tested, so they'll be there. But the problem is that a lot of these designers may not be the target audience for your game, and so then they're going to naturally give feedback. And I'm definitely guilty of this, where I'm like, I want to pull if I'm playing someone's game, I want to make it what I want to play, not necessarily what they're trying to make for the audience they're trying to make it for. And so one of the big things to keep in mind is like, oh, okay, is this person who's giving me feedback actually in that target kind of circle of the audience I'm trying to reach? Yeah. With the RPG like testing, have you found that, because like this, I guess that idea of like only doing the hour slot and so therefore picking up a portion of the game to test, that's definitely applicable to longer board games as well, because you might have a board game that goes for 2 or 3 hours but you've only got an hour session. Is it difficult for people to, because I'm saying this is difficult for me, but is there a way that you can kind of just say, oh, okay, I'm gonna test this section of the game? Like, is there some? How do you know how to test sections of a game rather than just starting at the start and playing through?
Yeah, that is like you mentioned, it's not easy all the time. And also there's a danger of you get feedback that are artifacts of the playtest type or the type of playtesting that you're doing rather than play. Right? So when you isolate out a part, you find that people might act in certain ways. So for example, right, like if you playtest the early portions of the game and then you start getting feedback where it's like, I don't know what this means, man. What am I doing here? It's like yeah, just because I haven't told you about like the end game conditions. Don't worry about it. I just want to see how the economy works at the start. And so there's always that problem. Like, and I think with RPGs, it's similar things happen. Like this morning we just had a playtest where like we just did one combat session, and because we knew it was like a 1 hour one-shot playtest, we just spent all our resources. It's like whatever it took to like win this combat. And I was like, that later the designer said, yeah, that's really interesting because like actually recovering resources is supposed to be really difficult in this game, so we just spent way too much. but it was great because they could see like hey, which are the ones that we are excited to use, like how did the dice mechanics interact with each other. So that's fine. So as long as you understand what you are testing and like what parts to like discard, right, and like so-called aberrant behavior because of like the artifact of like the mode of playtesting that you're in. So yeah, like I guess my point there is like you can chop games up in many different ways, right? Like you could just do another thing you can do with like board games as well, which we do in like tabletop RPGs, is like you just advance the game to a certain level. It's like, oh, I don't want to test like I want to test like a level 10 character versus like a level 1 to level 5 character, right?
Yep.
Or like in a board game, it's like I'm just gonna set up the board state as if we've been playing for 5 turns, and then I want to see how the mid game feels like, right?
Yeah.
And so there's ways to do that, but I think you have the same kind of like pitfalls to watch out for, just to make sure that like you know what you're isolating.
That spamming resources thing is such a factor though, because like I know if I'm like, oh, the game's gonna end, I'll just spend everything. Who cares? Like, yeah, like I definitely like how can you tell people no, pretend that you're gonna need them later on? Like, yeah.
so this is the other thing. Like, there's many types of playtesting, and like you just need to you need to like figure out what that playtest provides, and like different playtests provide different things, right? And account for that. Because one of the things I was speaking to another game designer who also designs board games, Adam Bell, who is going to be on the panel tomorrow, but because of the time zone weirdness, we already pre-recorded our segment, so he already talked about this. I already spoke about this with him, and he mentioned something about like sometimes you just need to play the game, not playtest the game, which is very different things. Because like when you tell someone that it is a playtest, then they are in the mindset of testing the game, right? They might push things that they wouldn't normally push. They might look for things that they don't usually look for. And you're not actually getting info of them playing the game, which I guess I feel like is a lot more evident in like tabletop RPGs, because like you can do anything, right? Like whatever you say happens, right? Like the main mechanic of tabletop RPGs is talking, is making shit up. Oh, sorry, can I swear?
Yeah, you can. We're fine with that.
Yeah. So the form of making stuff up when you are playing versus when you're testing can be quite different, right? And it's a lot more evident, I think, than like in like board games. Like in board games, often you think like the most evident way is if someone plays to try and break the game, right? But I think there's actually subtle differences as well when someone is play testing a game, rather than playing a game, where the way they play and the way they approach is also already like influenced by just the idea that you're play testing, right? So Adam was saying like sometimes it's fine to just say like, look, just play this game. I don't care. I'm just gonna run the game. I'm gonna play it. I'll take notes. Yeah.
It's such a great thing, and I've actually been like with my, and I promote it every week because I'm proud of it, but like even with my For God's Sake prototype, when I got the fancy, it's called a fancy prototype. I even said it on the box there, fancy prototype. When I got the fancy prototype made, I started having more courage playing it with not like just at regular game groups, like where people are just playing games, and I'd say to people, hey, I'm working on this game, do you want to play it? But I don't say to them, hey, this is a play test necessarily, and it is, and obviously they come at it just like okay, I want to win, or how do I do this, and yeah, I mean they do know it's in development, so there is a part of it that they will, some people will give feedback, but for the most part they're just playing it as a game, and I totally agree. And what Aaron said is such a good, wise point, that like there is definitely a different headspace to just playing a game compared to testing a game. So yeah, a lot of
I can imagine that. Yeah, just a comment. I was actually going to make a point about the sort of visual polish of a game and how that's going. The quote unquote crappy prototype that's made from bits of paper and cardboard and whatever ripped up from a cereal box is going to have a very different. He's going to put testers in a different headspace to a game that looks more complete, I suppose. And that sort of mindset, like you don't want to bring in random people off the street who aren't familiar with how playtests are supposed to work and throw them straight into your crappy prototype and ask them to use their imagination, because you're probably not going to get fantastic feedback from that scenario.
True.
Yeah.
so I guess this is the one deviation from playtesting tabletop RPGs versus playtesting board games is we just tell people to use their imagination all the time.
Yeah, right. True. That's a good point.
Yeah. So I guess that's one of the advantages of playtesting like tabletop RPGs is like, especially with
true.
playtest. So playtesting with people who are familiar with playing tabletop RPG is there's a slight distinction, because there are some people who still like, oh, I look for like I want my character sheet to be nice and professionally laid out, right? And then and that helps a lot, right? UI, like Aris, UI design is super important, right? Like we were just talking about it in today's playtest, like it helps you do math sometimes, like depending on how you lay it out, like it helps you do math. So that's really important. But like there's a lot of games and there's a lot of the culture in tabletop RPGs. So like, look, sometimes there's official character sheets, but I'm just gonna write down my character on like a piece of paper and roll with it. Right. So there's a lot more acceptance of like kind of there's a lot more acceptance of kind of like janky less polished stuff in tabletop RPGs. So that's one of the advantages, is that you can, it's easier for you to get closer to play rather than playtesting. Because like people are so used to like Alana,
they kind of
just imagine it's cool. Just imagine it's cool. It's like, don't worry, like the tabletop RPG players are very used to imagining cool stuff.
Well, actually, that's so that's obviously a big distinction between tabletop RPGs and board gaming, is the physicality of it. Do you find that your different imaginations cause problems with playtesting? Like if your playtesters imagine the world differently, that's going to change their experience, right? Like how do you sort of try to account for that in your playtesting?
So I mentioned that there's a better disposition, but that doesn't mean it's completely okay, right? It helps a lot if you have art, if you have like really polished like UI design, especially, right? Sometimes it's like the mechanic is fine, the way you're presenting it is not. You know what I mean? Like it's fine if you have a good character sheet and like good way of presenting like the flow of like how this thing happens, like when you have a professionally done sheet in front of you versus like because sometimes that helps just to explain concepts, right? Like even if I don't use the proper character sheet, I know it exists, and that helps me understand the concepts in the game, right? That helped me internalize the concepts, and so I can do my own like chicken scratch version when I don't have the tools that I need, because that already did its job of like helping you understand like the game mechanics, right? So like it still helps a lot to have that level of polish at some point to like put together really like slick. It's not even slick, it's just like put a lot of thought into like how you present information, how you present like your summary and your player guides. Like we do a lot of playtesting online as well, and like the tools that you're using for online is very different from the tools that you would use that would be available to you in person as well. So you need to make sure that you're testing both, right?
That comes up. That links into a question that we just got in the comments from Lee, which says, "Do you notice that some types of feedback only come up online versus in person or on Tabletop Simulator, but not in person?" Like, and that's a really good point. Like when you talk about different modes of testing or types of testing, does the online versus in person thing change things?
Yeah, it does in like subtle and unsubtle ways, right? Like sometimes one of the things that like you watch out for is that it's really fun to roll dice, like physically roll dice, right? And you lose that when you do it online, right? There's a difference between like rolling it, doing the like this the physics simulated dice on a 3D like background, or I type it into Google and tell Google like shows me a number that tells me what my dice rolls were.
You click the shuffle button.
Those feel different, right? And that can manifest in things with like how engaged people feel during the game. Because it can make your high, it can mute your highs, right? So if you want like if you're making a tabletop game, a tabletop RPG where like you want combat or like a tense like confrontation, like a social confrontation, something to feel like big and tense, and like when you finally gather up your dice and roll it, like it feels like a big event. That feeling can be a bit muted when you don't use like physical dice, right? And so like people might feel that like, hey, like they don't feel the arcs as dramatically as you might want them to.
Like when you're all
it kind of depends, right? There are people who
revealing.
are so
Yeah, like when you're revealing your cards in like simultaneous action selection, and you're trying to be, you can be sort of dramatic when you place the card down and haha, look what I played. But it sort of becomes a little bit more robotic when it's an online version and you click the Z button or whatever it is to flip your card. It's far less dramatic.
So I feel I don't know how to account for it for like board games, right? Like whether, but I do feel like sometimes in like online playtesting, some of the feedback of like what things excite you, you need to kind of like prompt that a lot more during online playtesting, because people tend to forget like the highs. So it's like you kind of like need to push more for like, hey, what are the highs that you remember? Because they might get muted, and like when you're just staring at a screen and it looks like there's not much happening. Yeah, so that's the thing that I would kind of like watch out for, and it's different for everyone. Like some people like really, even just pushing the button is like cool and exciting, and it's different for everyone, right? Like if you've played a lot of games online, like you can still get like that excitement from like just pushing the dice roller. But like it's just something to watch out for. It's just like make sure that you're accounting for that, and like when you it might seem that people I this is like anecdotal, right? It's not like something like I have like a lot of data on, but like, it does feel like it's better to push people more to like remember the things that they're excited about. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. It's definitely it would be fraught, bringing in a whole bunch of playtesters that aren't terribly familiar or haven't used online simulators much, and expect them to be able to give you a certain quality of feedback. Like you almost need to kind of spend some time with the simulator first before you can kind of, it puts more weight into their feedback as a tester once they're more comfortable.
And I know that I'm
but
guilty of that. Like I've played online ones where I'm not used to the tools, and half of my feedback is just the tools are not very. I don't know how to use the tools, which is nothing to do with the game. Like it's just, it was just like it was just like, oh, I didn't know how to pass cards, or I didn't know how to shuffle, or I didn't know how to rotate, like zoom in on. Like I remember playing testing a game a couple of years ago with Incubator Online when the pandemic started, and the game had tons of text on like cards and small things, and I really struggled with zooming in and out to be able to see the whole board, but then also zoom in on the sections to read the text when needed, and it was no fault of the game. Like that wasn't the actual game's fault. That was just a interface issue with that particular software. And interesting.
No, that's very interesting. That's a good question though.
Thank you, Lee.
So I guess like all this is sort of around like how we get feedback from testers, and as one of these, as a thinking from the lens of like of the game designer, the practical things that designers can do, knowing that they're going into a playtesting session. Like if we distilled it down to some of the practical things that they could do, like are there any specific things that you think of that like, oh, you as a designer should pre-prepare this kind of thing to sort of promote good feedback?
There's a couple, and like as we were talking, I remember there was one thing that I really like from like tabletop RPG design that has influenced back a lot of like I haven't gone back to a lot of like board and card game design, but like if and when I do, I will definitely bring this back. There is a thing. There's a practice, I guess, like or a common like norm in some games where they outright state like what the principles of the game are, right? So when you are playing like Forge in the Dark games, like when you're playing Blades in the Dark, right, which is a tabletop RPG about y'all being scoundrels in a kind of like diesel punk weird haunted city. So in there they set out what the GM's principles are, which is like to make life exciting and dangerous for like the scoundrels, and then there's principles for the players, which is like to lead like a dangerous and like play the scoundrel's life, get into danger, fall in love with danger, and find any way, like play hard and play fair, where like you find any advantage you can to like, because you're a scoundrel, to like get out of it, but within the limits of like, don't cheat, right? But like this game expects you to like push for every advantage you can, because you are starting at a disadvantage. So it lists out, I will say, I don't know whether I'm I'm paraphrasing, so I don't remember, I haven't memorized all like the player GM principles for Plays in the Dark, so if I get it wrong, don't at me. But but the concept, right? The concept of like having very clear what like this game is trying to do this, and so when you play, this is what you are trying to do. Like these are the player principles that you have, right? And that's also a way for the designer to say, look, this is what the game is about. This is my vision for what the game is. Doesn't mean you have to play this way, right? Because like tabletop RPGs, people will take them and play them however you want. But at the very least, I think the way I've been thinking about it, it's very good as a designer to know that for your game. It's like, look, what do I want to do, right? I don't care what the players do with it after that, but what do I want to do as a designer? Keep that in mind. Like we were talking about, like how to keep that vision of like what the game is, even when like conflicting feedback comes in, then you have like a guide for you, right? And doesn't mean that it doesn't change. It doesn't mean that like you stick to it all the time. Like we talked about, like while playtesting the game, you might find that like, hey, I want to pivot the vision of this game, but just the practice of and because when you write tabletop RPG rules, you introduce what the game is, and it's very important to kind of like explain what the genre and everything of the game, right? And so it makes you think about what the game is about a lot, right? Where I think when you're writing like board games, the mode of like writing that, sometimes you forget to write it down. Like you might know it. It's like, hey, I want this game to be about like gaining small incremental advantages, and then on the last few turns, like it feels like an avalanche of like choices, and like all of this domino effect feels that you know that in your mind, but you don't write it down anywhere.
Yeah, true.
And like having the practice of like writing some of this stuff down has been good. Also because sometimes like you stop working for a game for a while, and then you come back to it, what was I doing with this game? Where was I? It's like, exactly. Okay, yes, right, this is what I wanted the game to do. So yeah, like that's kind of like
so get it out of your head and onto the page.
Yes.
And prime your testers with that sort of information, so they're not left guessing what's going on.
Yeah. And we were talking about like different like types of testing as well, right? Like, so I think being clear with your playtesters and like just tell them, look, upfront, this is what's going to happen. If you tell
define
me
their role.
Correct. Like being sometimes you just have to be obvious. Like, if you give me any feedback about A, B, C, or D, I will listen to it. I won't consider it for now. I'll park it aside. Right?
It's not what you're looking for this time. Yeah.
It's like it's not that I won't listen to you, but like I'm not focusing on that right now. So just know that upfront, right? Like being able to be upfront, and that's I think that's actually something from incubator days as well, right? Because like we also had like fairly short time slots, right? It's just like, how much can you get done? I know sometimes when we end up like talking for like half an hour about like game design, philosophy, and everything. But like when there's like 3 other people waiting to like playtest the game, it's like, all right, this is the feedback we need to get through. Everything we can talk about it at lunch.
Well, I remember one of the things that we would tell people is like, okay, if you're booking for an hour and you want to have half an hour of feedback, well, that means you've really only got half an hour to play the game. So just think about what your priority is. If your priority is to unpack the idea, discuss it with other people, and brainstorm stuff, great. But you need to build that into the time that you're booking in for. We have some, just before we decide to go down that path, I just want to say Benjamin has said hi to you. So that leads into, though, like, I think it connects to, are there any techniques that you've picked up about how to take feedback and receive feedback in a productive way? Like, because obviously sometimes feedback can be really harsh, like, and can cut you deep if it's like that people tell you that your game's terrible or whatever. And or other times, sometimes maybe the other thing, people say, oh, the game's fantastic, and they don't actually give you any, like, there's nothing to work with to go, oh, okay. Yeah. And so, like, do you have any things that you've picked up about how to process feedback?
Do it for 7 years. Is my first advice.
Easy.
Do it for a long time.
This is the thing, right? Like this isn't to do with you, Aris, but like I have a personal thing of like, when someone asks me about like advice or like tips, like, it's very hard for me to like give it with a straight face, because I know it's like, oh, I can say it, but like the real thing is like, I've been doing it for 5 years. You know, it's like, it's really hard to practice some of this unless you just sometimes to do it, you just have to do it, right? You just have to go through ego death of like taking like bad feedback and like bouncing back from it. Like, you can listen to like all the advice, but like in the moment of like being crushed, it's very difficult. Like, regardless of what some random guy on the internet tells you about, like, oh, keep your spirits up, or like keep the vision there. It's like, in the moment, like it just fucking sucks, right?
Well, I mean, Aaron and I play tested a number of games together, and
that kind of.
Oh, sorry, we've had some internet lag, and I was talking over you. Sorry, Aaron, you keep going.
Sorry. No, just go.
I was gonna say, like, one of the things for me is I'm an exceptionally emotional person. Like, I take everything, and I'm like, it's just an emotional thing. And I know that when we've playtested, we've been to a number of events, and early on in my design career, and you have consoled me when I've had a playtest session, and then I've just been like a blubbering mess of like, this person said this thing, and like, I'm the worst designer in the world, and
they
like,
were
I don't
mean
know what I'm
to
doing,
me.
but it's not just that. It's more that like it becomes just like, oh, it is a reflection of like my skills. I'm terrible at my job. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, and like, it presses all those buttons, right? And I think there is what you said, Aaron, about doing it often and or doing it repeatedly helps, because like I had a session in January this year where I was playtesting, and I had a playtester like just basically tell me my game was the worst game ever. Like, it was absolutely terrible, and like ripped me to shreds. And I managed to have, like, I found myself able to handle the conversation, try and unpack what they were actually not, what wasn't working. Like, I didn't just go, all right, thank you, I'm out of here, bye, and then cry in the corner, because like I built up enough resilience to be able to process it and go, okay, they didn't like the game. That's okay. We'll go on. And I did have, after, like, I handled that, I think, pretty well, especially by my standards. But then I was also fortunate that later on I was talking to somebody who knew them quite well, and was a fellow game designer. And that person said to me, look, they rip games to shreds all the time. That's kind of their thing. So don't take it too personal. It's just kind of part of their personality. And that also helped me then go, okay, cool. That's just kind of like how they approach things. But I think trying to say that, like, it can hurt though, like, as in playtesting can be very painful.
And to actually give like actionable advice, right? Like I like like yes, to get better at it, you have to do it. But that doesn't, like, just because the advice might not help you in like that's the moment when you're like feeling it, doesn't mean we stop giving advice. So that was the second part of what I was trying to say. So but know that like sometimes you just gotta go. You just gotta practice it, right? Like sometimes you can know all the theory you want, but like you gotta practice.
Yeah.
So that's why I wanted to put that up front because it's like, dude, practice first, and then here are some tips, which is like you mentioned, right? Like yeah, like yeah, if part of ourselves goes into things with design, it's
Yes, Ahmed just said,
personally.
if anyone's not watching, yeah, Ahmed just said, since part of ourselves goes into the things we design, it's important not to take things personally. And I will be the first to admit, even though I know this wisdom, I struggle to live it. I'm getting better, but it is challenging because you do, like, this is your baby that you're like presenting to the world. So yeah.
Well, one thing to remember too is that when your playtesters, the easiest thing for them to access is the I hate it or I love it. Like that's a really easy thing for playtesters to access in terms of like if they had a really, really great time, they're going to tell you they had a really, really great time. Or if they really, really, really hated it, they're going to tell you they really, really, really hated it. Those are very accessible. It's all the stuff in the middle that's harder to tease out from it's the playtester that sits there in quiet contemplation but doesn't really give you much back. They're the ones that you got to really tease out, what did they like, what didn't they like, why didn't they like it, and they may not know how to tell you that straight away either. So I guess it's, I know from my days of game design and playtesting, like often you want to gather this as much as you can, but don't process it right then and there. And then later on kind of review the information you got back to kind of weed through it, process it, understand it, because in that moment of someone getting very excited and telling you it's the best game ever, that it's you can get wrapped up in that moment.
I think also like one of the things I've also heard some designers do is they don't ask for any feedback at all. Like I've heard of some high profile designers who they just watch and then they make their own deductions about, oh, okay, the players they're constantly going for more gold. Well, do I want that to happen? How do I stop that? Like, and so I think it's I don't think there's a right or wrong way. Like I think it's everyone's going to have their own approach. But it does mean that if you're the type of person who doesn't want to talk to people, you don't have to. Like it's okay. You can just watch the playtest and then make your own. And I just held up before, but like having a notepad and making notes is like so helpful.
Yeah. Taking good notes is really helpful. But like you mentioned, like it's very tricky being in that point, right? Because you have to balance like your ego with your humility, right? Because it's like you need to know that like you can be wrong, but at the same time, you also need to know that playtesters can be wrong. And so striking that balance is really tricky, and like that's the part that like comes with experience. But like I think like one of the things that I've been thinking about, and like I've been trying to tell my students as well, is like trust your future self to be a better designer than you are today. Like you tomorrow will be better than you today, right? Like it's very easy for them because they're students, and so like they think like the whole future is still ahead of them, right? So it's really easy advice for them to take. But it might be harder for us, right? It's just to think about like, look, you trust yourself. You are a good game designer, or you will become a good game designer, right? And so if you have bad ideas today, you'll have better ideas tomorrow. Don't worry about it. Like because I think some people say like you have to distance yourself from the game, right? Like the game is not yourself, right? And that's one way to think about it. But like I prefer to think about it as like no. The me that made that game is already dead, right? That person like is in the past, right? I'm here today and I will be here tomorrow and I will make things better and I'll make better things, right? If this game sucks, I'll make a better game tomorrow. And that kind of like requires a little bit of like belief in yourself, right? But like also like with the humility that like, yes, I made a bad thing, but that doesn't mean I will continue to make bad things, you know? So just try. That's kind of like the mindset I want to try to have and like encourage like for my students. Like, and like I say, it's very easy for young people to think that way.
Yeah. I just want to raise a completely non-related thing, but the software on my end for the streaming software is glitching on me, so I don't know if we're still streaming. We might be, but it may not be recording it. So who knows? Technology for the win, right? But it just made me realize that we've been talking for about an hour, so it might be good to start wrapping up.
Yep.
I will just reiterate that in the description box is a link to Aaron's panel that's going to be tomorrow at the Big Bad Con online, which is also on playtesting, and you're hosting the panel with other people like
So
talking. Yeah.
Yep. So they will do all the smart talking, and I'll ask all the questions.
Wonderful. We might quickly do the questionnaire, even though. Thank you for that, Alana. Big Bacon. So we might do the Materialise questionnaire because you were our very first guest, and I think the questionnaire has changed since you originally did it. So we'll do the questionnaire, and then I'll move into the outro stuff. So the first question. Let me go to my settings. Where is everything? I'm just forgetting. No, I'm all thrown because of this recording potential glitch that's thrown me. All right. Question 1 is, are you more of a heart, a diamond, or a spade?
I think I've answered this question before, but I have no idea how I answered this. So another thing I love to say nowadays is like I reserve the right to change my mind. So if I've changed my mind since then, sure.
Absolutely.
I think I'm more
You're growing
of
and evolving.
Yeah, I think I'm more of a club. So I'm going to use this to like quickly kind of like cheat and answer one of the previous questions. One of the best things to do as a game designer and to get better at playtesting is to just have find a good community of people to like be a part of. Like that helps so much. And increasingly like that's what I want to try and like build up with like all these playtesting events and like just making like safe, supportive communities. So you build little clubs for yourself. where you can,
I love the segue there that you.
Yeah.
Yep. Perfect. And I agree with that. Question 2 is dinosaurs who are pirates or robots who are ghosts?
Oh, this one's different, I think.
This has changed a little bit.
Yeah. I think dinosaurs who are pirates. Piracy has been on the mind. Like I think piracy is cool. So I'm definitely pro pirates.
Yeah.
But are you pro eye patches?
Well, if the dinosaurs are fine, if their eyesight is fine, they don't need eye patches.
They don't need it. Yeah,
they can still be a pirate.
Yeah. Eye patches are just they're not prescriptive. They're descriptive, right? Like you don't need an eye patch to become a pirate. But if you're a pirate, you have a high chance of losing an eye. So
Well, have you heard that? I think Mythbusters might have tested it 10 years ago, 15 years ago. But one of the myths around it is that it was so that you had one eye that was in the dark. So when you went below decks, you'd move the eye patch, and your eye was already accustomed to seeing in the dark.
Oh.
Have you heard that before?
Oh.
Yeah. So because the idea was that so that they didn't have that like moment of going below decks and not being able to see anything because it's really dark. Now I think Mythbusters may have tested it and they may have said, doesn't really make sense or it didn't work. But it's one of the theories anyway for why the popular idea of the eye patch is there. But you're right, they probably did just lose eyes as well. That's a legitimate probably outcome of that lifestyle, I imagine. Especially when you didn't have great medical care like we have today. All right, question number 3. What's your favorite snack or drink when playing a tabletop game?
I think I answered it, and it was like peanut M&Ms, right? I still love peanut M&Ms. It's like they're fairly clean, and they're still tasty. So peanut M&Ms.
I got talking about that. I saw some really dumb random ad for like gadgets from Amazon or Wish or somewhere like that. And have you seen the little finger chopsticks?
Yeah. Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about.
They just- it's
my
been like,
brother-in-law
what are they-
gave me a pair.
Are they as useless as they look, or are they actually kind of okay?
I've never actually tried using them, so
You never use them.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Oh, that's funny. All right, question number 4: cards or dice?
I think I answered this as cards as well, right? Cards are
You
just way
said
better.
cards last time.
Yeah. Cards are way better in every way. Fuck dice.
Yeah, except for the rolling part. Dice roll a lot better than cards. Yeah.
We'll see
No,
about
that's
that.
why you get that's why you get round cards. You get circle cards. Circle cards that you can roll. All right, the last question, question 5. What fictional character would you invite to a game night?
Oh, I'm pretty sure I answered this. What did I answer? Did I say Ben from Parks and Rec?
I honestly,
I don't remember. Yeah.
I rewatched a lot of that episode today because I was just like, what did we talk about last time? I want to make sure I'm not like just repeating everything. But I didn't quite watch to the end, so I don't remember what the questions are that you answered. I don't remember your answers. Yeah, but
I only thought of it.
But he's great. He's great though. Like,
Yeah. I only thought of it because like we saw. I don't remember where we saw it, but like we saw like a clip of that part where he was like telling Leslie about like, oh look, this is the cones of Dunshire. It's like, oh yeah, he's cute.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I'll just get rid of this banner. And sharing your insights and wisdom. I've definitely appreciated it. So for anyone who wants to follow along with your journey, we have some links, if I can go to them. So I believe is this just Twitter, or do you use it for, do you have other places where it might be used?
Mainly Twitter, I think. Twitter and I think Instagram, but like I don't really use Instagram that much.
You don't post to Instagram? Yeah, fair enough.
I mean,
now
if
we
you
have
want
a
to see
link here.
photos of plates, I guess.
Empty plates.
See, only people that follow you would know that that's the thing. They're empty plates. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
So what is this link, Aaron?
Yeah. So you can you can find most of my tabletop RPG games, the PDFs, stuff on my itch page, which is like a storefront, at ehronlime.itch.io. It's down there. But this is a podcast as well, so I'll say it. It's aaronlime.itch.io. Yeah.
Yes. And that's where people can buy or download a lot of your work. And then we have perfect-hold.ghost.io. What's that?
That's just the newsletter. I try to just do once a month just to like give you an update on like what I've been up to. Usually it's just stuff on like games that I've been working on, and like little bits of playtesting that I've been able to do. That's it.
That's awesome. And then we'll just repeat again that you're at part of Big Bad Con online over this weekend, so your panels tomorrow. Yeah. So if anyone's interested in hearing you or seeing you share that panel, but also what is Big Bad Con? I know you went to the physical version. So is it just is it mostly RPGs or is it board games as well? Like,
yeah. So it's primarily RPGs, I think, but they also like there was also like board games. I played a bunch of like board games while I was there actually.
Cool.
And I think there's gonna be some panels that are on more like board and card games side of things.
Okay.
So that they are covering that as well. Just just so you know, like it's definitely more of a tabletop RPG convention.
Yeah.
But there's crossovers. Yeah, so that happened. So there's a physical con that happens around September, October. I think it's October
September,
this year.
Oh, okay.
Oh no, it's September this year. It was October last year, I think.
Okay.
Okay. It was October last year. I remember because when I was there, it was Halloween.
Halloween, yeah, okay.
Yeah. So it's definitely October. So they have a physical con, and they also do a free online con in like the Marchish, around this time, March, April, I think. That's more accessible to people who can't make the way all the way there. So at least there's some programming panels, discussions. That's just an online convention, and it's very cool.
That's awesome. I didn't realize it was free. That's really cool.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you to everyone who's been a part of in the comments and joined us along for this wild ride. Thank you again, Aaron, and thank you, Alana, for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
No problem.
Oh, no worries. Like, we'll have to. What was it? So you were on our second episode. This episode 20. So in another 18 episodes, we're gonna have you on. That's gonna be the rhythm that
Put it in the calendar.
committed ourselves to. And then we'll see by that time. It'll be close to when you should be releasing the Spectres of Brocken files. So
Probably.
it might work out. We might do it. Who knows?
Yeah.
So if anyone wants to check out some of the stuff to do with Launch Tabletop, then please head to launchtabletop.com, which let me go to the links and get them. So we've got Launch Tabletop. Sorry, Alana. So launchtabletop.com. We are a board game manufacturing company, but we also are doing other things as well. So if you head there, you can check us out. Our main product or offering right now is called Launch Lab, which is a prototyping and small print on demand game service. It's what I printed my game through, and I'm very happy with the quality. And so if you want to check that out, then you can head to launchtabletop.com and sign up. And then if you do decide that you want to make a purchase of getting one of your games made, you can use the code Materialise at checkout, and you'll get 20% off your next order. And I'll just press that. So it's Materialise. If you wanted to chat with us about game design or manufacturing or production, then please head to our Discord, which is ltt.ltd/s/discord. That's also one of the main places where we'll put updates about what we're doing. And was there anything else that I want to say? Well, the other thing I guess I'm going to bring up, because we're getting closer and closer to launching it, is Stellar. So we are working on the next main I don't know. I think I had this problem last time I tried bringing it up. It's like product. It's not really a product, like thing that
thing, very descriptive.
Which is called, I know, which is called Stellar. And so Stellar is basically going to have it's a place where publishers can have artwork from their games available as prints for people to buy on these lovely metal prints. I don't have a sample with me right here because all my stuff's getting packed because I'm moving house. I don't know if you've got a sample on your desk there, Alana. You may not.
Not handy. Not that I can show on camera. They're
fair enough.
Secret squirrel business, which we'll be able to show more of very soon. Yeah.
So if you're a publisher and you've got artwork that you want to offer to your fans, then check out Stellar and maybe we can work together. I think that's basically everything. Materialise is produced by Launch Tabletop, and I'm Eris, and I've been your host. And thank you again, everyone, for being here. And I guess we'll say goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, gonna